The Supreme Court has dramatically redefined the Second Amendment, declaring the right to bear arms a fundamental individual liberty and sharply limiting the government's power to regulate firearms. The 6-3 ruling, led by the conservative majority, sets a new strict standard. Any gun law must now align with the Second Amendment's original text and historical meaning. The court rejected previous approaches that balanced public safety with individual rights, insisting that judges can no longer weigh modern policy concerns against constitutional freedoms. This decision expands on the 2022 Bruin case, applying the history and tradition test to all gun regulations, not just public carry laws. The majority argues this is the only way to prevent the erosion of gun rights, while dissenters warn it's impractical and dangerous in today's society. The ruling immediately shifts the legal landscape, making it far harder for lawmakers to justify gun restrictions and empowering gun rights advocates to challenge existing laws. Rather than ending the gun debate, the court has intensified it, ensuring that the fight over the Second Amendment will play out in courtrooms for years to come. The nation now faces a new era where the right to keep and bear arms is on par with the most protected constitutional freedoms. At the heart of the ruling is the history and tradition test. Any gun law must have a clear historical analog from the late 1700s to be constitutional. Lawmakers can no longer cite modern issues like mass shootings as justification. They must prove similar regulations existed at the time of the founding. This sets a nearly insurmountable bar for new gun control measures and forces courts to abandon the old two-step approach that considered public safety. Judges, lawyers, and legislators are now required to become amateur historians, searching for colonial-era precedents to justify modern laws. The court's majority suggests only regulations targeting weapons not commonly used for lawful purposes in the 18th century are permissible, a standard that could protect modern firearms like the AR-15. Dissenters argue this test is unworkable and ignores the realities of modern gun violence, leaving lawmakers powerless to address today's threats. The new standard has already sparked fierce debate over what counts as a valid historical precedent, with both sides preparing for years of legal battles. The ruling fundamentally shifts the burden. Unless a law mirrors 18th century practice, it's likely unconstitutional. Gun rights groups are celebrating the decision as a historic victory, claiming it finally puts the Second Amendment on equal footing with other fundamental rights. They argue the new test protects law-abiding citizens from arbitrary gun control and curbs government overreach. Supporters see the ruling as a restoration of the founders' intent, ensuring the right to bear arms can't be eroded by modern legislative agendas. Meanwhile, gun control advocates and public health officials warn the decision is a disaster for public safety, making it nearly impossible to address mass shootings and modern firearms. Critics say the history and tradition test is rigid and out of touch, forcing lawmakers to find 18th century analogs for 21st century problems. Dissenting justices and opponents fear the ruling will lead to more guns, more litigation, and more violence, prioritizing individual rights over community safety. The decision has deepened the nation's divide, with both sides bracing for a new era of legal and political conflict. The ruling puts hundreds of state and federal gun laws at risk, as the new test gives gun rights advocates powerful grounds to challenge them. Assault weapon bans are especially vulnerable, since the court's standard protects firearms in common lawful use, making bans on AR-15s and similar guns hard to justify. Magazine capacity limits, often enacted to reduce mass shooting lethality, now face scrutiny because there's no clear 18th century precedent for restricting ammunition. Age-based restrictions on gun purchases are also in jeopardy, as the government must prove such limits were common at the time of the founding, a difficult historical case to make. Even red flag laws, which temporarily disarm dangerous individuals, are being challenged for lacking direct historical counterparts. The Supreme Court's recent Rahimi decision offers some guidance, but the broader question of disarming people without criminal convictions remains unsettled. The legal landscape is shifting rapidly, with courts now the primary battleground for the future of gun regulation. In a rare move, the Department of Justice has openly challenged the Supreme Court's new Second Amendment standard, vowing to keep enforcing federal gun laws. The Attorney General has directed prosecutors to defend these laws in court, arguing they are consistent with American history, even as the Supreme Court's test makes that a steep uphill battle. This sets up a direct clash between the executive and judicial branches, with the DOJ hoping to build a record that could eventually prompt the court to reconsider its approach. The DOJ's defiance signals a deep rift over the ruling's legitimacy and practicality, raising questions about the separation of powers and the rule of law. Federal judges now face conflicting signals. Follow the Supreme Court's directive, or consider the executive branch's historical arguments. The administration's stance is both a legal and political statement, aiming to rally opposition and keep the gun debate alive in Congress and the states. Critics accuse the DOJ of undermining the rule of law, while supporters see it as a necessary stand for public safety. The result is heightened polarization and uncertainty as the legal and political battles escalate. The Supreme Court's decision and the DOJ's resistance have thrown the lower courts into turmoil. Judges must now interpret complex historical evidence to decide modern gun cases, leading to inconsistent rulings and a patchwork of laws across the country. Circuit courts are already split on key issues, such as whether nonviolent felons can be permanently disarmed, deepening the legal confusion. Lawmakers are left in a bind, unsure how to draft gun laws that will survive court challenges under the new standard. This uncertainty has created legislative paralysis, with even urgent gun safety measures stalled by fears of legal defeat. Ordinary Americans are caught in the middle, unsure which laws apply and whether their rights or safety are protected. The confusion is likely to persist for years as courts struggle to apply the Supreme Court's sweeping new test. The Supreme Court's decision has unleashed a wave of lawsuits, with gun rights groups challenging laws nationwide. The court is already considering whether to hear cases like Connecticut's assault weapon ban, and has agreed to review Hawaii's restrictions on carrying guns on private property. Each new case will force the court to clarify, or possibly rethink, the boundaries of the Second Amendment and the history and tradition test. Meanwhile, lawmakers face gridlock. Any new gun regulation is likely to be challenged and struck down, shifting the debate from legislatures to the courts. The future of gun laws now hinges on judicial interpretation, not political compromise. The legal revolution's outcome is uncertain. Changes in the court's makeup or years of litigation could reshape the standard again. What's clear is that the nation is entering a prolonged period of legal conflict, with the meaning of the Second Amendment up for grabs. The battle over guns will be fought in courtrooms and history books, shaping American life for years to come. The Supreme Court's ruling is about more than guns. It's a bold statement on constitutional interpretation and the power of the judiciary. By embracing originalism and the history and tradition test, the court has signaled a shift that could affect rights far beyond the Second Amendment. The decision redraws the balance between courts and legislatures, giving judges the final say on fundamental rights and limiting lawmakers' flexibility. Supporters call this a necessary check on government overreach. Critics see it as undemocratic and polarizing. The ruling has intensified the culture war, making compromise harder and turning the Second Amendment into a defining political issue. Whether this approach will be seen as a wise restoration of original principles or a reckless disregard for modern realities remains to be seen. For now, America must navigate a legal landscape where the past dictates the present, and the future of gun rights is more contested than ever.